And we are recording. Is it Keitel
Ki-
or
Keitel. I
Keitel?
think there's a famous American actor, Harvey Keitel.
I don't
So
know.
it's yeah,
I have no
might
idea.
be a generation before you.
Fuck if
Yeah,
I
and
know.
there were supposedly some Nazi generals. I think there's a
There is.
very
Yeah, I was
bad
just
Keitel.
I've listened and for everybody listening, this is Fredrik Keitel. He came on last Tuesday, and for all future listeners, today is Tuesday, August 16th, 2022 at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time, episode 884. We didn't get into the topic that we were supposed to get in last time at all. And I have one note about Nazis, and then I'll hand it over to you so you don't get sidetracked. But I've one of my favorite books is Operation Paperclip by Annie Jacobson. I've listened to it like 10 times over the last 5 years, and I'm doing my annual listen through. And yeah, I started I think last Tuesday. And yeah, it's somewhere in there. Yeah, in like the first couple chapters, there's a Keitel. There's a bad man named Keitel. And I was like, hey, that's Frederick's last name. And I was like, oh wait. Then I was like, oh wait, Fred, he's also in Berlin. I was like, oh. And
Yeah, I mean, I, I was told there's no connection to the American actor nor the general in Germany, but who knows? Maybe it
likely
is one
likely
of those family secrets that got buried.
likely story. It's like having a grandpa from Argentina who looks like me, fucking white skin and blue eyes, and it's like you don't look Argentine. Oh, it's but so we don't
But
get sidetracked, man.
yes,
Take it away, or we can go
yeah,
down a rabbit hole of Nazis. I don't give a shit.
maybe for another time. Even though
Yeah,
as a German, I had to go through it during my entire school life,
yeah,
so it's yeah, it's fascinating. Also, the stuff that was never really uncovered.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think that might be a rabbit hole for another day.
All right, I'm down.
All right, so initially I contacted you. We had a few tries and finally made it last time. Um, because I had the thought that maybe your podcast, your audience, and some of the guests you had, especially Robert Malone, for example, would be the audience that could appreciate the story, and maybe there's intrigue in looking deeper into it. So basically, there are many ways to start this. This is quite complicated. Maybe the first step would be to ask you what you know about blockchain and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin in particular, and
Uh,
then towards Satoshi Nakamoto later on.
I know very little. I know the layman's it's supposed to be the equivalent of gold in that there is a finite. I mean, granted, they're always finding new gold, but for the most part, I mean, an ounce of gold today costs like $1,900. You take the cost of an ounce of gold in 1922, and whatever that cost was, right now you can live on an ounce of you. Right now, an ounce of gold can pay for, like me, a single male and not necessarily an urban area like New York. An ounce of gold can pay for like a one-room apartment. It can pay for utilities and most of your food. $1,800. I live on like $2,300 a month. In 1922, an ounce of gold, whatever that dollar amount was, it's enough for like a single person to live in like a one bedroom apartment. And the idea that 2000 years ago, an ounce of gold could about do the same thing. My understanding of that is so that's constant. Fiat currency is the government and central bank's ability to inflate that and rob people, and really it's a control mechanism of it's like the ATP in a cell. You're controlling the flow of energy and the control of resources, so you don't even have to tax people. You just print 10 times more money, throw it all to big corporations or defense contractors, and you can kind of manipulate the movement of a country or the world. And then fiat has kind of fucked us. Thomas Jefferson said he feared central banks more than a standing army. And, Andrew Jackson's last words were, I killed the bank. And obviously, from 1913 forward, we've had a dramatic, like 90+% reduction in the purchasing power of the U.S. dollar. But it's the world reserve currency. And after World War II, there's the Bretton Woods Conference, and then which tied all the other world currencies to the U.S. dollar to gold. Nixon closed the gold window, and we've been inflating it. and it seems like now more than ever people are hip to the idea that we're getting fucked, and Bitcoin, to my understanding, I've had people try to explain it to me, and I'm humble enough to admit that I really just don't understand the mathematics or the computing behind it. But I know in theory, it's just another it's a not just it's another gold, and that there's a finite amount. You can keep inflating the US dollar. Bitcoin will maintain its rareness, and you can't have the hidden tax through inflation. That's my understanding of it in terms of what I know blockchain is in the same way like gold is. It's you can't really fake it, or not that we know of. I'm sure the NSA will crack it. We can't really fake it. It's like a very like a public, almost like fingerprint. Like everyone sees it, everyone knows ownership. Again, how it actually works, I don't understand at all. But I know in theory it's a second attempt at gold. Its drawback being it could be wiped out by an EMP. That's about it.
Yeah, well, it's not 100% clear that it's
All right.
supposed to be for gold, like gold 2.0 or something like that. But in general, there are some things Bitcoin can do that a lot of the other blockchains and in the crypto space can't do. And also, obviously, as you know, it's the biggest one, and there's the most volume traded, I think, probably over like total size. And I would say the mainstream finally has gotten to know Bitcoin a little bit. Even
Yeah.
mom and dad have heard of what
Yeah.
Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is.
Yeah.
So I have, as I said last episode, a background in gaming, and then became a professional poker player and an entrepreneur in the gaming space. So it's not necessarily anything that correlates with Bitcoin, but I know a lot of people from back in the day that moved over to trading and hodling cryptocurrencies, and some of them got filthy rich and some of them got wrecked. But in general, I would say overall the space is mostly not about the technology of blockchain, but more so a lot of people trying to get rich by identifying the right cryptocurrencies to hold, and then envision a future where these might be worth a lot more because people are interested in using them.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them don't really have utility. And even Bitcoin, as safe so far as it's been and as good of an invention, it has not found mass adoption. And in part, it's because transactions are still too expensive, and because there are other issues with Bitcoin, where you cannot make as many transactions as you would like to.
Yeah.
For a larger audience. In general, I think it's 7 transactions per second as a maximum for what we are calling Bitcoin. Now, the story starts where the question comes in: who invented it? Why invented the people or the one person that thing? What was maybe the vision behind it? And then towards the future, what should it have been if the person did not or would not have been gone or disappeared? And basically, it's almost like a religion. There are people thinking it should be this, like anarchists and hyper capitalists, and others in between have their own idea of what it should be. And that's the beauty and the curse of Satoshi Nakamoto disappearing, that people kind of fill the void with their own ideas of what it could have been.
Question.
And yes.
Do we know what Satoshi Nakamoto's middle name is?
I think I do, but that's part of the story. We don't know anything really about the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto back then, his real identity. Everything that he mentioned was probably disguise. Japanese guy is 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah.
Might have been true, but probably not that person and not that birth date and so on.
Well, like my name's Thomas Patrick Carrigan, and like the way you'd write that on like a roll call or like a tax form is always last name, comma, right? First name, middle name.
Mm-hmm.
It depends what his middle name is, but if you did Nakamoto Soshi, like what if it's NSA? What if that's just a troll? Because that would be something the NSA would do, right? The biggest because that could not to go on a not to already divert it, but it could be the best honeypot ever to see if anyone if any other country had, because right, like nuclear fission and fusion, we have the back in the 70s we had the hotel system of satellites which could detect nuclear flash, so we could know if other nations had developed nuclear capabilities. What if you wanted to find out if another nation or a private entity had quantum computing capabilities or just beefed up conventional computing capabilities? You would make NSA a golden honeypot. You'd make, sorry, the NSA would make Bitcoin a golden honeypot that if you crack it, you're a fucking trillionaire. And then that's how you would find it. And then I don't know, assumedly you'd go fucking, deliver some freedom with a JDAM or something and set them back. Sorry. I'll diverge the spiraling off of this podcast. Back
Now
to you. Back to you. Take it away. Don't let me take the reins of this because I will fucking we will in an hour we'll be back on General Keitel and screaming about the Nazis. So sorry.
Well, truth be told, it's not clear if an agency is involved or not to me. That is still a looming question. Back in the day, Gavin Andreessen, who was the main or core developer of Bitcoin after Satoshi Nakamoto left, he before Satoshi left, he actually had a talk with the CIA where he gave a presentation of what Bitcoin is, and also I think I saw a documentary that Crypto AG used to manufacture these machines for governments like Iran and so on for help. I think it was based in Switzerland or something to have these machines where they can send messages back and forth or something like that, I think. And then it turned out that the CIA infiltrated that company 30 years ago, and the machines were manufactured in a way that they could know what Iran and other countries were doing, basically. This is, from what I know, a true story, and it was like big in the media, I think, a couple of years ago. And you remember, I think a few years ago, there were these mobile phones that were encrypted. Not Huawei, it was like a specific for illicit traders and criminals, basically.
It sounds vaguely familiar, like
Yeah, and
like 2016-ish.
From what I remember, those phones were also manufactured by, I think, the CIA or something like that.
That's
honey traps are real, and they have happened in the past, and not too long past. And the NSA is known for not only, I think, inventing the SHA-256 encryption thing, but also a lot of other technology. I think some of the best people in that field are working for the NSA.
That's the plot of the book Black, about Black Ops by Christopher Whitcomb, former FBI hostage rescue team. And it's there's a fictional company named Qantas, and they create encrypted phones for the average man. And it's like highly classified. Like only the head of the NSA and the head of the CIA know about it. Congress is all against it. The big telecommunications companies are all against it for competition. Congress is screaming about the terrorists are going to have ability to cooperate and coordinate without us cracking. And the NSA, like, there's like a facade, like, because the only tippy top guy knows about it, the rest of the NSA is like, we can't have this. And the Justice Department comes out and it's like, this is free trade. And the reality is it's an NSA op, and so the terrorists use it thinking they're safe, and now we know where they are better than ever.
Yeah, I think something along those lines actually already happened in the past.
Well, I think that's
happening right now.
100%.
So that's my big issue with the tech. It's is there maybe possibly a backdoor? Is there some cooperation, like working together, like Facebook and Google are with agencies? That that is all still unclear. And if I'm right about the person, then that person actually has worked for agencies in the past and trained some of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not far-fetched to think that somebody with the abilities required to invent that thing must have a background somewhere in that area, right?
100%.
So that is also one of the reasons why I came to my conclusions. Basically, my best friend during the start of the pandemic was getting heavily into Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as investments. and thought like it would explode during the pandemic and after, while it was already going up. I'm not sure. I think that must have been mid 2020 or late 2020, or somewhere along those lines. And he was getting very involved and told me I should get involved, understand that stuff better for the future. And I have heard of Bitcoin already, I think somewhere in 2012 or so, when poker players and former gamers were investing in it. So I was familiar with it early on, but I was not too enthusiastic about it, because the interface looked like the early internet days, or like what you would say is like an MS-DOS equivalent or something like that.
Sketchy.
And then you had the danger of losing your money if you made one typo in the address. And I thought it was very interesting and unique to give the power back to the people in some way without a third party in between. But I thought it was still too expensive, still too slow, and the interface was very early days. So I knew about it, but I did not look deeper into it. And then Ethereum and all that other jazz came around, and it was interesting to me, but I was not too involved. So back in 2020, I went into the rabbit hole and looked deeper into it. And I thought like maybe not first principle, but in general, it's who invented it and why did they invent it and what happened. And basically, as we know, Satoshi Nakamoto invented it. It might be one person or a team. I go deeper into that later on. But at the same time, that technology basically, it could be from the agencies, or it could be from somebody who wants to change the world and how the financial system works. And from my perspective, as somebody who's also an entrepreneur and a gamer, when I look at that kind of design, it would only make sense to have digital money if it's dirty cheap, basically instant and very safe, right? Mm-hmm. That's how we would envision money in the future if it would be digital. And I always thought it would be digital eventually, because Star Wars already had that idea, and probably some sci-fi authors hundreds of years ago. Yeah. And it doesn't make sense to have it physical without having some of the data stored in the cloud or whatever will be the future. Yeah. So that part resonated to me, but not how the implementation worked. And then I went deeper and found that there are many things about Bitcoin that I don't necessarily agree with. The premise is basically that you only have a few transactions per second to have the system safer and easier to be stored on all our local systems, basically. So everybody can look into the blockchain and verify for themselves that it's all good, basically. But in my mind, it limited extremely what the system could be doing, because if you want to go to MasterCard or Visa levels on transactions, you cannot stop at 7 transactions per second. So for me, Bitcoin therefore was a bit flawed if it would become a global currency, because you cannot really transact that much, and it's not instant and it's not super cheap. So that was also why I was not interested in the years prior. Back to 2020, when I went into the rabbit hole and I tried to figure out why Satoshi did what he did, I wanted to understand who he could have been. So kind of like a detective kind of case where you try to figure out who the inventor is based on clues on the internet. So I used Wayback Machines, and I looked through Reddit stuff, and I basically spent weeks and nights, all-nighters, trying to figure this out, because I can get very obsessive when I get into things, whether it was gaming, poker, or you might understand that because of your podcast. You seem also to have that personality.
I know. That's all I know.
Well, I mean, you don't get into deep whole conspiracies if you're not interested in spending a lot of time on a topic.
You gotta just swan dive into the black hole.
Yes.
Another side note, it could be, when you're saying earlier, it's either someone that wanted to change the world, or it's an intelligence agency, honeypot, or nation state control mechanism.
AI.
Or AI. It could also be like what we talked about last time, though. It might not be black or white. It could very well start as something that could have been co-opted. It could have been hijacked. It could have been.
Oh, you're getting warmer. You're getting warmer.
That, like we talked about last time, though, that often seems to be Occam's razor, is that it's somewhere in between, right?
Yeah.
Oppenheimer wanted to end the war. and then he fucking hated it. Like,
He
so
kind of ended the war, but maybe
no,
not
well
in the
he
right way.
well he did, but then he later went to Truman's office and said, I have blood on my hands. And Truman said, kick that hippie out or never let that hippie into my office again. I have blood on my hands. And they fucking kicked him out. They took away his security clearance and they wouldn't even let him in on the H bomb. And Oppenheimer actually reached out to, I think, Edward Teller after the H bomb detonated. And he was like a crack fiend. He was like, tell me how big it was, please. And it was like breaking protocol. And Edward Teller told him it was like 10 megatons. And he was like, thank you. But they wouldn't let him in because he had gone against the party line. And so they shut him right out of the fucking national security estate. They were like, get out of here. But that's something that, right, started as one thing. Leo Szilard defected to the United States from Germany and had Einstein write a letter to FDR. And Leo Szilard was also Ed Teller's chauffeur. And their whole thing was Germany can't get this, right? We need to get it for world peace. And we get it. And then it started, and then Leslie Groves, the general in charge of the Manhattan Project, actually polled all the scientists and said, who thinks we should drop this? Like 87% said no. And so he just buried the report. And a lot of them were later cut out of the hydrogen bomb project. So we're like, we can't have these fucking hippies. But here you have these guys who in 1942, 43, 44, 45, red, white, and blue, we're going to develop the bomb. We're going to save our boys in Japan. 5 years, or what, 1952 is the H bomb detonation. We started developing it in like 48 or 49. Just 5 years later, you took these patriot guys from Manhattan Project and you're like, get them the fuck out of here. Like, that's 5 years. That's how quickly they can be co-opted or hijacked. So maybe it is Satoshi. Maybe he's like, I'm going to change the world. And the NSA is like, yo, that's cool, but not really. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's also possible that somebody has started it, and then, as you said, the
Corrupted.
NSA or somebody else got
Or he
involved.
turned
I mean, also it makes a lot of sense because why would such a system with such potential be completely ignored by the agencies when, like, their main purpose is to like figure this stuff out and make sure it cannot be used by the adversaries, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that for sure. And if you look into who was working on Bitcoin's development in the last couple of years and the years prior after Satoshi left, Blockstream is a company that Adam Beck comes to mind, and their background and the investment portfolio of the VCs that are involved in that also shows that there is a possibility that there has been some co-op going on, because Beck, the Digital Currency Group, and Bain Capital are two of the big investors
Bain.
in Blockstream.
Isn't that Mitt Romney's company?
Yep.
That's such a comically evil name. Bain
And
Capital.
some others, yeah, some others as well. And Digital Currency Group, they have investments in all kinds of cryptocurrencies, news outlets in the crypto space, and other blockchains, basically. So they not own the space, but they are by far the biggest investor and most involved, and have like a lot of power and influence into the scene. What gets posted on the media, like what kind of companies get what funding, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
So they are heavily involved in that. And then Blockstream pays developers to work on.
Hey,
Far as
your microphone is getting scratchy.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Anyway, so also Jeffrey Epstein's, I think Digital Garage was also a bit involved back in the day. So we can only guess what Epstein had to do with any of this. I don't know, but the name came up during the research, which is interesting. So we have that part. There has been, in my opinion, some influence in using the system in a way where third parties can participate and monetize some of it. And it goes like this, basically. You have these companies investing, and then Bitcoin Core being developed under their tutelage, basically. And the transactions are not getting quicker or cheaper quite the opposite. The system is not getting better over time, in my opinion. And then they introduced updates that basically changed the system in a way that was not the initial design. And as far as I understand it, the person who might be Satoshi Nakamoto actually got involved again because the changes, the altering of the system has implications that those people might or might not have foreseen, but that made the invention different, basically. So for the rest of the discussion, when I say Bitcoin, I mean something else than what you know. What you know is the ticker BTC, basically, right?
Yeah.
What I will talk about are the sort of forks of Bitcoin, BCH and BSV. That is Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. Those came in 2017-ish and were forks of the initial, what is known as BTC, basically.
Has anyone ever come out and claimed to be Satoshi?
Yes, a few, but not many credible ones.
Is it possible that he effectively locked himself out?
Sort of. Like, if you follow my story, there's supposedly n-lock time system where the funds cannot be accessed until you have certain keys, basically, and then and only then after a certain amount of time it's possible to move the bitcoins, basically, or have access again.
All right.
So I don't know. We are both the type who go into long monologues, so I don't know how far we are in already.
Yeah.
But basically, during my research, I came to a few names. Adam Beck was one of them. He invented Hashcash, I think, and was mentioned in the white paper. And also is the CEO of Blockstream now. So that was one of the people that I thought could have been Satoshi Nakamoto or part of it. Then obviously there's Hal Finney, who people know and love. He had what is it called, the ALS, I think, where he was in the wheelchair in the end.
Gehrig's disease, yeah, muscle wasting.
He was working on Bitcoin very early on, and he was the first person who received the transaction from Satoshi Nakamoto showing that the system works.
Oh, okay.
So he was there, and he had a neighbor whose name was Nakamoto, basically. So there's also that. But it led me not to anything looking into Hal Finney, and he always said he is not Satoshi Nakamoto, or he was not part of the team. So we have a few others. Nick Szabo is one of the most prominent. He invented, I think, eGold before Bitcoin. And also he made some interesting posts that were edited and not backdated, but dated forward, basically. So there were a few things where people thought like, oh, he's trying to camouflage that he was involved. I think he also was on the Tim Ferriss podcast a while back, and he mentioned that he invented Bitcoin and then quickly corrected himself. But he also always said he's not Satoshi Nakamoto. And then there were a few others. But to make the story a bit shorter, I ended up looking into even the ones that are unlikely, the fake Toshis and the scammers, kind of. There's some Indian guy and a few others, but there was one guy in particular that was interesting. His name is Craig Stephen Wright. And he's an Australian, severe Asperger's, I think, one of the highest decorated security experts in the world. And by his own accord, and some of this you can look up, he has, I think, more than 20 degrees at this point. And he's in his mid-50s, and he's still studying, basically, multiple degrees at the same time. So he's obsessed with knowledge. But also, if you look into him in the on the internet or Google or DuckDuckGo, most of what you find is that he's proven to be a scammer and that he's claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto, but he's basically a fraudster. So I was like, okay, that's still interesting because it's a unique combination that the guy claims to have all these degrees and still have this background that I can check online that, he does have, some of these degrees, I think. And also he worked with agencies prior. So there's some interesting things here. And then I came across this Satoshi affair by O'Hagan. It's basically almost reads like a novel. It's a short story, and the guy O'Hagan, he followed, I think, Assange back in the day and some other guys. So he's very known for being in contact with guys that are, not famous but very intriguing, basically.
Yeah.
And he wrote a story about Craig Stephen Wright and followed him a few months. And it's during a very specific time. I think it was in 2015. And basically, it was right after Wired magazine and Gizmodo both outed Craig Stephen Wright as Satoshi Nakamoto. Basically, in Australia, his house got raided, and a hacker leaked files and emails and so on of him looking like Satoshi Nakamoto, like talking to people and kind of exposing himself in these private emails that were not supposed to be leaked. So that was interesting, but the story that I wrote kind of made it look like he might have done it himself, kind of outed himself in some way through being a hacker to the magazines or something like that. So I wasn't sure. But if you read into the Satoshi Affair novel, it's interesting because he has spent time with that guy, Craig Stephen Wright. And when I read through that and then back-checked online and found more and more interesting sources to put things together, I realized that this guy is extremely intelligent, very odd, and very obsessed about Bitcoin, basically. And there is some knowledge he has, or at least he portrayed to have, that he speaks about the invention of Bitcoin and the technology in a way that basically nobody else does, in my opinion. So I got intrigued, and I focused my rabbit hole towards Craig Stephen Wright as a fraudster or as somewhat involved as being Satoshi Nakamoto. And then there's a video where he was supposed to, I think for Times Magazine, I think it was, where he was supposed to sign the Satoshi Nakamoto coins during a videotaping and exposing himself as Satoshi Nakamoto. And the O'Hagan guy was in the room during that. So he was there at a very lucky time. And basically the proof fell short. And then the official narrative was that he was a fraudster and he tried to claim to be Satoshi, but it turned out that he cannot do it, or he couldn't do it. So that's where the story ends for most. But since I was already so deep into that topic, I did more and more research, and I figured out, or at least I think I figured out, that there are many reasons why he didn't sign that day, but that certain people have seen him doing key signing sessions and having access to the Satoshi coins, basically. And supposedly, it might be more or less, Satoshi Nakamoto probably has over 1 million Bitcoin. It would be, yeah.
Can you explain what a Satoshi coin is and what key signing is?
Oh, by Satoshi coins, I mean, the smaller increments of Bitcoin are called Satoshis. Okay. But basically, I meant he has what is known as Satoshi coins are some of the first Bitcoin that were mined.
Okay.
And they're Satoshi patterns, it's called, where people try to analyze through blockchain data who could have mined certain blocks. Because if you're the inventor, you probably know how to do it, basically. Yeah. Right. And there were some entities early on that mined better than most, I think. Gotcha. So they thought it might be Satoshis. And then they came to around 1 million Satoshi coins, basically, that are attributed to Satoshi Nakamoto's mining early on in Bitcoin's history. We don't know for sure, but that's what everybody kind of agrees upon, that it should be around 1 million. Craig Stephen Wright himself said that he has way more than that 1 million. Obviously, he's not saying how many, and it's a claim, so it cannot be verified yet.
I mean, if he has way more than that, it should be like somewhat clear, though, right? I mean, does he have like a balling mansion? Does he have like 10 cars and a private? Even if he just used a fraction of that, right? Even if he just took 1,000 Bitcoin, if you took 1/1000th of your million Bitcoins, it'd still be 50 million bucks, right? Or 30 million, where the fuck it's at now.
These numbers, you can barely imagine how much wealth he might
But
be sitting on if it's
but
true.
but the point is like, like you don't have to look at Elon Musk and go, is he spending $300 billion? If someone's worth $100 billion, it's safe to assume they've probably spent 1/1000th of that on just personal luxury.
Mm.
You know, no one has any doubts that Jeff Bezos is Jeff Bezos. You look at his yacht, you look at his house, whatever. You look at his security detail. No one has, people that hate Donald Trump say he's not a billionaire. His fans say that he's a billionaire. But I mean, no one has any doubts that the dude doesn't have like 9 homes from penthouses in a gold plane, right? So does
Yeah,
Craig Stevenson have some residue of wealth? Is he?
supposedly, like I've seen some cars, and
No one's
he's
hypothesizing
living.
that you and I own a million Bitcoin, right? No one's going, Tommy doesn't talk about it, but I think he's Satoshi. No, they look at him and they go, oh, he afforded rent for another month. He's still going, right?
Well, a million Bitcoin is also like almost
50.
5% of the entire circulating Bitcoins, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I mean,
it's a lot.
what's Bitcoin at
Um,
right now?
I
What's
don't know,
the
probably like 26 or so. I don't know. I haven't checked. And I don't really own BTC, so that it
20
doesn't matter to me.
23,936, 24. It's 24,000. I mean, you have 1,000 Bitcoin, that's 24 million. You have a million Bitcoin, that's 24 billion, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, wait. No, you have 1,000 big. Yeah, no, 1,000 would be 24 million, and then 1,000 is a million, so that would be 24 billion. Yeah, so you'd have, even if you had it and didn't use 99% of it, it'd still be like you're gonna have like a penthouse in Manhattan, maybe like a flat in London, like a Bugatti. You're gonna
Yeah,
you're not taking coach, right? You're at
yeah,
least
you
in a G6.
I mean, you might not live like a billionaire, but you should probably travel with a
You're
lot of
looking
comfort.
somewhat. You should be able to find some level of comfort, right? Warren Buffett's still in the same house that he's been in since
Yeah,
1950, whatever. Sure, but I mean, the guy's never in like a ratty looking suit, right?
yeah,
He's never shown up like, oh, sorry, my flight was canceled. Like he didn't have to stay in a Motel 6 last night. There are some things that are very clear, like you're doing all right.
yeah. Basically, Warren Buffett is a good example of somebody not overdoing it and basically living more modest, I would say. I would think Satoshi tried to not make it obvious who he is. Basically, there were not many or any information you could find online of who the identity is. And so I would say he would not be a baller, basically, because that would defy the purpose of trying to be
I know.
pseudonymous or anonymous. But in Craig Stephen Wright's case, he was outed against his will, from what I know. And then also, supposedly, he claimed taxes on Bitcoin income in 2009.
Or conversely, you're rich as fuck and you're able to hide the fact that you're Satoshi. Let's say
Yeah,
Elon Musk is Satoshi, he can hide it very well because you go, oh, he owns Tesla and SpaceX. Bezos owns Amazon. You're not really questioning it. So they could be Satoshi and you wouldn't suspect it because you go, oh no, they're worth all this money, but because of X, Y, and Z.
yeah. I mean, if Satoshi would have wanted to be unknown, it would have been maybe possible. And if that person, is filthy rich, then he would not have shown it, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot really use that to identify the person. What I did is I tried to figure out who has the knowledge, who has the background, and if you're the inventor of something, you kind of invested a lot of energy and love and passion into that project. So you must know things that outsiders wouldn't know. And Satoshi did not explain everything. He actually rather explained very few things, as far as I understand. So yeah, there's a lot of room for interpretation, basically.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Frederick, monologue for a minute. I gotta go to the bathroom. Take it over. Welcome to Fredrik Cast. Take it over.
Okay, let me try to structure it a bit, because my thoughts are all over the place because I have never tried to explain it that way to somebody. And I need to wait until Tommy is back, otherwise he will miss out on this. But the idea is that Bitcoin is not the way people see it, or the way it is portrayed in the media, or in the crypto media more so. And I think it is in part because there's financial interest not showing what it's capable of, and also because a lot of these information are hidden, and yeah, I'm not certain why people would like to suppress it outside of financial gain, but maybe there's more to that. Yeah, let's wait for Tommy to start the rest of it. And for the audience, I hope I can make sense of it all. Basically, I wanted to get on to give those of you that are already interested in certain conspiracies that are not mainstream to look more into that. So the name is Craig Stephen Wright. I'm not saying he is Satoshi, but in my opinion, from my research, he's most likely to be Satoshi Nakamoto, or was part of the initial team, if there was a team. There was also the court case that I will speak of when Tommy is back, that alludes to the possibility and has these documents in court that people can actually look up with Court Listener or some other tools. So I was talking to the audience about the additional information that are out there. Basically, Craig Stephen Wright had a business partner, Dave Kleiman, who was also a forensics expert, digital forensics expert. I think he was on some TV shows in the past as well. And they worked together on some stuff. And then Dave Kleiman died, I think, in 2013. And Craig Wright approached the father of Dave Kleiman and told him that Dave was kind of involved or helped with Bitcoin, basically. And Ira Kleiman, who is the estranged brother of Dave Kleiman, then went on and talked to Craig and eventually sued Craig for the half of the Satoshi coins, because he believes that Craig Wright might have been Satoshi and that his brother might have been involved in creating Bitcoin, and therefore he should own half of it because they did not have a written contract, supposedly. And there has been some shady stuff going on from both sides, and the crypto space has looked very deeply into that matter. But the court case actually happened and was finished last year. It was one of the biggest private liability cases, where not online IP case, I think it's called, and it was about, I think, something like 360 billion was the amount that was fought for, because it's not only the Satoshi coins of 1 million Bitcoin, but also the IP and the rights and so on about the authorship of Bitcoin and the database and so on. So that was in court. I think it went from, let's say, 3-4 years ago until end of last year, I think December 2021 in Florida. Funnily enough, early on in the case, the judge was Bruce Reinhardt, by the way, who was also Epstein and some others case court. Alex Jones said also Bruce Reinhardt. So who knows, but it was interesting. But eventually Craig Wright in the end won the case. He had to pay some amount to one of his older companies, but won the case and did not have to pay any Bitcoin to Ira Kleiman, the brother of Dave Kleiman. But during the court hearings, you could look on Court Listener or other court websites and look into the documents, basically. And you had you had like, I think 3 or 4 years of witnesses, evidence, and claims and counterclaims in court that you can look up. I haven't looked into all of the documents, but a good bunch, and I know people who have looked into all the documents basically. And when you really take the time, which most people won't, and it's fine, but then you will see a narrative of why Craig Wright was most likely Satoshi Nakamoto, why a few people knew but only spoke in small circles about it, why he basically tried to be pseudonymous basically as Satoshi Nakamoto, and why now he's in the open and basically says he, has to change a few things for Bitcoin to be what it actually was meant to be.
Wasn't there another Nazi Reinhard Galen?
Probably.
I think
Reinhard sounds very German to me.
it is Reinhard. I'm trying to remember who was the. There was one guy that was like notoriously evil. Like even the head Nazis kind of feared him. It's Reinhard Galen or is Ernst Kaltenbrunner. He's the guy that the OSS killed. He was in his like convertible and they threw a bomb at him, and he didn't die immediately, but it blew up the seat he was in his like Mercedes, and the seat was stuffed with like horsehair, which I guess was like a luxury back then.
Mm.
Some of the horsehair got into a wound and he died of sepsis a couple days later. But it was one of the earliest OSS like black OSS, the precursor to the CIA. It was like the earliest of the earliest like spec ops. It was like mid World War II. I can never remember who, but apparently there was Annie Jacobson talks about him. Apparently he was this guy that even the head Nazis were like, that guy gives me the chills. Trying to remember Reinhard Galen or Ernst Kaltenbrunner, or it's Keitel. I don't know. Sorry.
It could be Keitel, yes.
Christ. Sorry.
Yeah, so in my opinion, there's good evidence that this inventor of Bitcoin is this Australian computer science and security guy.
Okay.
And he was outed in, as I mentioned, 2015, and ever since then he claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto after he was outed.
The Asperger's guy with the 50.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's been 7 years, and in 2000, I think late 17, 18, we had these forks. I mentioned BTC, which is what is known as Bitcoin, was forked into BCH and then BSV later on. So BCH means Bitcoin Cash, and BSV means Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. And Craig Stephen Wright right now is working on BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. And he's kind of an opponent to Bitcoin Core BTC, basically, which is the big known Bitcoin that is worth a lot. If you look at, say, CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, which tracks the prices of cryptocurrencies, you will see that number one is still BTC, obviously, and the big one, as you mentioned, 23 or 24,000. Then you have BCH. I would need to look it up, but it's probably like $150 per coin only. And then you have BSV, which is like $60 or something. So they look like the abandoned stepchilds, right? The red-headed stepchilds. And there's the one big winner, BTC. But then also one of the reasons why I came on is, Robert Malone and all the research you've done for all these different conspiracy topics, conspiracy quote unquote, is that you cannot just Google these things and then know for sure that it's true. You have to check the sources and so on. And then in the case of Robert Malone, you have fact checkers telling you, if you look deeper into it, that you're wrong, basically, and that Robert Malone is, also a fraudster. And the funny parallels here is that both of them are considered fraudster in their field by the mainstream media, and in my case, the crypto media. And both have patents that are also kind of, in my opinion, something that an inventor would want for their invention. But in the case how the media portrays it, is like patent trolling or something like that, or scammers. Only scammers want patents, which makes no sense to me. Furthermore, we have like the crypto mainstream media hunting this Craig Wright, and we had a few months where the mainstream media was hunting Robert Malone, basically. And both are highly intelligent, very credentialed, and in the media they were portrayed as people that try to be somebody else. And that's why I thought there is intrigue for your listeners to look into this rabbit hole, because in my opinion, we see these parallels happening where the certain, in this case of crypto media, it's probably the digital currency group that I talked about, and others that have a lot of power and want to keep the things the way they are. And then you have, as I mentioned, Blockstream and others that have direct influence in how Bitcoin is developed and what is happening. And then you have, in the grander scheme, these third parties that, like Coinbase and others, that make a lot of money from like exchanging fees and other fees. So the invention itself tries to cut out the middleman, basically, and gives more power to the people, peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened is you kind of have this bird and you break his wings, and now he cannot fly, but he can walk quite fast with the right tools, basically.
Yeah.
So instead of having this beautiful designed invention, you have this broken wing bird that is still interesting, but it's nowhere near what it could have been in the air flying, right?
Yeah.
That's my opinion, and that's why when I looked deeper into it, to me it made sense, because BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, the fork of what is known as Bitcoin BTC, actually can make unlimited transactions per second for thousandths of a cent per transaction, no matter how big or small. And basically with SPV, almost instant, where the block size gets bigger and bigger, and you have only the header as a way of looking up the transactions. And that way you don't need the same process as before. It's much quicker and better for the blockchain, in my opinion. This is maybe a topic where once it becomes too technical, I cannot really talk about it because that's not my main expertise. I think you would need to bring on others that I could suggest if you're interested in more in depth and somebody explaining all of this. I can only talk about the rabbit hole and the people I talked to during it and my own conclusions from it. But what I find interesting is that if Craig Schledenwright is indeed Satoshi Nakamoto, then he's alive. He now lives in England, and he's still working on Bitcoin in the way of Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. And they have created much larger blocks, many more transactions that are possible only there, and at a fraction of the price, basically. So the initial design that I spoke of early on, where you have frictionless, almost instant, or basically instant transaction for almost for free in a secure and fair system, that's already here and it works right now. Like, you could download one of the wallets and make a transaction to me, or I could do this to you, and it would be basically instant, and it would be a thousandth of a cent. So that way you can all of a sudden compete with something like MasterCard or Visa, because as far as I understand it, for a transaction under $1, they are not working well, because you pay them fees for the transactions, and the fees are proportionate to a certain extent, but if it's very low, then the fees are exponentially higher compared.
Oh yeah, it's like early on E-Trade, the stock trading website, back in like the mid 2000s. I had an account when I was 18, and it was like $15 to commission a trade, whether you're buying one stock or 1,000. Now, if you bought, like, I invested $2,000 in Apple, and
that was a good investment.
It did. I think I turned my money over 8 times in the next 4 years. Yeah, I cashed out at 16,000. But it was $15 to buy and $15 to sell, right? So $30 over. But I was buying however many shares, 10, 20 shares. I made 14 grand. That $30 you don't really care about. But sometimes I would buy one stock for, and it would be a $10 stock. Even if that stock went up 100%, I still lost what cost me 15, and then cost me 15 to sell it, $30, and I made.
Wow.
So, I'd say I buy, because I remember, like, at one point I remember buying like one Microsoft stock or something, right? And I held on to it for a couple weeks, then was like, fuck this, and sold it. And even though that one stock went up a ton, $10 to $20, 100% growth, I still lost $20. So it was like, what's the point? And then later on, E-Trade, I think when TD Waterhouse was competing with them or whatever the fuck, they finally got rid of the trade commissions, I think in like 2020 or something, to sort of become competitive again. But it didn't make sense I don't know why this is such a simple analogy. I don't know why yeah, I get what you're saying. Bitcoin.
No, but I understand, and it's true in certain industries. Early on, you have these high fees, and it's complicated, and you have to do it manually. And now you have stuff like Robinhood, and it's free, and
Yeah, it's ordering something on Amazon that costs less than like $50, and then you got to pay shipping. There's no point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it only made sense if such a system would be extremely cheap, quick, and all this stuff. Otherwise, why use it and not PayPal, or why use it and not Visa and Mastercard? So once I found who I believe to be the guy, I also found the tech that I thought like had the best design and works the best. What a weird coincidence, one might say, that it's the same coin that I also attribute to the inventor of Bitcoin. But also, I think there's a reason why basically Bitcoin and BTC, that is known as Bitcoin right now, are very different. It is because, from my perspective, the developer early on did not know really what to do with the invention, because the inventor wasn't there anymore. He left in 2011, I think. And so they tried, probably maybe in good faith, and then also the people that are involved in Digital Currency Group, AXA, Insurance, and others, it kind of traces back to the same old money, basically, and here and there the Bain Capital and others. So why would they want to have a system that is quite far superior to everything else, and you cannot really control it? So what they did, in my opinion, was find ways to manipulate it that they can financially benefit while having more control of the system. And that's what you can probably fix that analogy for me. But the electric car, you know the documentary Who Killed the Electric Car, I think it's called, or something
Heard
like
of
that.
it. I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
But basically, you don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to think of old players finding this new, paradigm shifting technology and thinking, well, why would we want electric cars when we sit on all this oil, for example? Or why would we, as payment processors of Visa and MasterCard, who make all this money, have this tech that we cannot really control nor make fees and money off, right?
Well,
so
if you're really smart, you're an old player, a JP Morgan, a MasterCard, a Goldman Sachs, a Visa, or whatever. Initially you would try to subvert it, and then once you realized it couldn't be subverted, you'd try to own it, and then you'd own the dichotomy, right? If GM was really smart or Ford was really smart, they would have bought out Tesla. And then you offer, it's like Mark Zuckerberg owns Instagram, but imagine if he never disclosed that he owns Instagram. He would own Facebook, and then people would be saying Instagram's the new best thing. He would own the false dichotomy of saying, oh, Facebook's better, and then also owning the thing. It's owning McDonald's and the Burger King next door.
Yes.
You're going to go, it's owning Microsoft and Apple, right? No, don't flee to the other one. You're getting all the money. So
you also hedge the risk, basically.
Yeah. Right? So if you're really smart, you would try to own Bitcoin and then still prop up the idea of the old thing and watch everybody flee, but still be pocketing it all.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Bitcoin, BTC, BCH, and BSV, if you had BTC, I think in 2017, when the first split happened, you would also say you have one Bitcoin BTC, you also would have one Bitcoin BCH. And then the same happened with BSV. And people who owned BTC back then, and they never sold these others, they can hedge basically by owning one of each and then figure out which one will win out over time. And that's also something that I would advise to the listener if they're involved in this stuff. Don't sell your BTC to buy all BSV right now. Do your research. And if you want to be safe, then just hold all three of them, or whichever you think is most likely to succeed, and then, you know, weight it that way. That's kind of a small hedge. The next question would be, why is there, you know, Bitcoin, but also 20,000 other cryptocurrencies in the space? If you have, say, one internet, you don't need 10 or 20 other 20,000 others. It doesn't work that way. Or TCP/IP protocols, you had a few protocols, or say you have Blu-ray and what was the other, Full HD or something. So you usually have one or very few winners, and then stuff will be built on top of that, which happened for TCP/IP. Back then, there were many different protocols who could have succeeded, but one basically has become the winner, and we don't talk about the others, or I personally don't know even the names of the others. And in the case of cryptocurrencies, in my opinion, all there is to those 20,000 others is that people are kind of either coming up with something and trying to sell it to people and make money, or some good or genius inventors came up with other blockchain solutions, but they did not fully grasp the whole past of encryption, combined with the incentive model, combined with economics, you know, what you talked about, digital gold and stuff like that. So it would be very hard to become the next Satoshi Nakamoto and come up with all these different ideas and fields and combine them together. That was also one of the reasons why I came up with Craig Wright, is like, he has background in computer science. He has studied law and history and other things. He does know about what gold and money and so on. And he, in my opinion, studied certain topics specifically for inventing Bitcoin. So you have a narrow list of few people that are known to be possibly the inventor, but also they would need to have the time, they would need to have the expertise, and they also would either need to lie when asked if they are the inventor, or nobody has figured out that one person that has all the credentials but is completely unknown, and there's no family or friends that talk about it, or if the person died, nobody found out his secret. But we do have the Craig Stephen Wright guy saying he is Satoshi Nakamoto after he was outed by a hacker, and it's not being picked up by the media, basically, and it has not been talked about properly. I think it was only said he could not sign in 2015, therefore he is a fraudster. But there's basically a Twitter army of trolls attacking him when he speaks on Twitter, and then also attacking him on YouTube and so on. Some of the most commented videos on some of the shows he appeared on are about him not being Satoshi Nakamoto. So there's a lot of religious belief almost of the different fractions, the BTC, BCH, BSV, that their coin is the true Bitcoin, kind of like, you know, with gods and Jesus and whatever. But all, or vegetarians and carnivore and keto and so on, that's also very religious. That is one aspect of it, but then also it's a very different idea of what it is. BTC is portrayed as digital gold, basically. You don't transact it quickly, you don't transact often. You store it basically digitally, and you don't really need to touch it, or you shouldn't even not touch it, because it will be worth more in the future when everybody uses it. But to me, that does not really make sense, because if it's digital gold or digital peer-to-peer electronic cash, you would want to be able to use it like a MasterCard, Visa, to use it like a PayPal. So that is also one of the reasons why it never resonated with me. And right now with BSV, all that stuff is possible. So in my perspective, we already have the invention and the solution. It's just not known, and it's kind of suppressed, in my opinion. And the question is why? And also the question is, yeah, am I completely wrong about this with my research, or have not enough people looked more closely into it? Because the ramifications are big. If the tech is corrupted and used by others, then we might not get to the invention that we kind of deserve, in my opinion. Because a system that is peer-to-peer without a third party that can block you, it's important in now with, the truckers in Canada was one example where Bitcoin BTC actually did not work the way it was, portrayed. But in general, I think it's important to have some sort of data integrity back, that, an NSA or a Google cannot just farm your data. And with a peer-to-peer system, we kind of like a Napster, but much, much superior. We have this ability again to do it between people without somebody just being able to take all the data and looking at it, and then it's like, well, I didn't do anything, so therefore I don't care. But eventually we should all care because it's our data that is being used. And Craig Wright himself is a big proponent of an individual where they have power and not the government has all the power. So I'm not sure, he's probably more of a libertarian guy, but in general, I would say his vision is a system where it's from the people for the people kind of system. And that would help in third world countries as well. And my last point, and then you can take up, is that initially, if you have such a system digitally, not just physical money or gold or cash, but digital cash, you have the ability to do programmable stuff with it. You can link it to data basically, and you have the secure system that not only makes it possible for you and me transact back and forth Bitcoin, but also to have data stored on the blockchain and much, much more. I mean, Ethereum, for example, wants to be this world computer, but Bitcoin in the right design can do all of these things as well. So you can have these contracts, you can have all these things that are only possible with a system where data security is within, and you have this transparency, because a Google could not host a blockchain that I would trust at this point. And since you can look into the code and see, as far as I understand it, there is no backdoor. We will see that later on when the NSA, takes your Bitcoin away. But as far as I understand it and know, a lot of good computer scientists and cryptographers and so on have looked into Bitcoin, and there is no backdoor as far as I know. So if it's all true, then we have a system that works, that can do a lot more, and that is available and works right now. So the question is, what am I missing here? And I hope the audience can address it in the future when they do their research. But from what I understand it, it's suppressed. And I see the parallels with the pandemic, but that was, big pharma and who else who didn't want to have alternative medicines or a different narrative. In the case of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, I'm not sure how deep it goes, because the WEF, for example, also had these programs where certain services that are third-party services to Bitcoin were promoted by the WEF and so on. So there might be a deeper connection that I can talk about, that I can't talk about because I don't have the specific knowledge. But as I mentioned, the funny thing is Epstein was in the rabbit hole, and companies that are now, ruling the world are also involved. Bain Capital, for example, as you mentioned, and others. So there might be a wider conspiracy that is not only in these other areas, but also towards the future of digital money. And it would make sense if they want to have control, or if, they want to have influence. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is something that you cannot just look over. But yeah, that's where my knowledge ends towards that conspiracy. But yeah, if you have questions towards Bitcoin or why Craig Wright might be Satoshi, then go ahead. Let's play a bit back and forth here.
I would have to, so just all this surface level stuff, hearing all this from you, and then just whatever knowledge I do have. And then based kind of like what we talked about last time, based on every like historical precedent, just human nature patterns. I would have to say there are two phenomena or scenarios that will point to who it is, and one of them's already been fulfilled. And the first is the fact that no one knows for sure. The fact that there's even a debate tells me that it's being obfuscated, and that to me, my gut feeling says it's an intelligence operation. That's just first impressions. The fact that it's like that like the arguably like the most powerful new technology. The fact that it's being no one knows where it came from. No one knows who it is. And it's like the most base human draw, right? Money, fame, power. No one knows who it is. To me, that says intelligence. Now, whether that's one person who was co-opted, whether there's one person who was assassinated, whether Satoshi is a group of people, whether it was funded and planned by the NSA or like infiltrated or whatever. To me, that first thing, where did it come from? The fact that it's fuzzy. To me, that says intelligence operation. That's just first impressions. The second would be we then have to see does it hold up? So, like the Ottawa protesters, I don't know enough about that. It was their wallets that was tracked down, right? Not the individual like Bitcoin or
Yeah,
it,
I think they did not have access to that, but
yeah,
as you mentioned, probably through a few
yeah.
steps they got access.
But
That's
it would
also just to intersect here because
sure.
it's important, the difference between the ideologies or the religions of Bitcoin is that the BTC fraction, they want to have it small and storable, and only a few transaction, and that nobody can confiscate it and so on. Um, but the reality is that Bitcoin as a blockchain is transparent, and it does not really use encryption in the way people think as a cryptocurrency, because it's not based on what Craig Wright says. It's not a cryptocurrency; it's a blockchain, and you can basically have not anonymous but pseudonymous abilities on the blockchain. So what the one fraction says is you're completely anonymous. Nobody knows what your wallet is. Nobody can confiscate it. But in reality, if there are no servers and no mining, then there's no Bitcoin in the end. The system comes to a halt. So there is a way where if the Earth explodes, Bitcoin is not going forward. And also, since it's pseudonymous, if you track the wallets, you can kind of figure out who's who if not enough people are transacting. So, or if you want to out yourself, you can show I made this transaction, and then you're not anonymous anymore. So the reality is, from my perspective, you're pseudonymous and not anonymous. And also it's a transparent system. So Craig Wright himself said the invention is not to make it easier for criminals to do illegal stuff, but to make it almost impossible for criminals to do illegal stuff with Bitcoin because it's all traceable.
Mm-hmm.
You have this digital system where you timestamp the blocks, but on all the transactions, and you over time have this huge database of all kinds of money in and outflows, and it's all traceable. So to your point, that screams agency, but it also would scream Aspergery guy who wants to sort the world in his vision, basically, who wants to have a more fair and transparent system, for better or worse, because we could also, if the government uses Bitcoin, we can also trace government spending, for example. So if there would be adoption of this system, it would not be for criminals to hide illicit trade, but it would be transparent for people to be traceable if they do criminal stuff, but also to trace those that were never traceable before, EA, governments, and certain individuals. So it would make everybody be more honest about the way they move, basically. And that's what is interesting, the transparency possibilities with that system. So it's completely different from what is portrayed, for example.
My second, I guess, scenario or phenomena to examine would be you couldn't just approach it and say, well, if like the government continue in the big, mainstream media and corporations continue to criticize it, then that would mean it's good, right? It's because it's right, if they try to censor Rogan, then that means it's a good episode, right? But like we said earlier, with the whole idea of the encrypted phones, like the plot of that book was, well, you had all of them criticizing it for it to appear like genuine criticism, and then you use it as a backdoor to monitor terrorists in other nation states.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't necessarily use mainstream criticism of it to validate it. So what I would say is the second point is, does it, if it continues to grow and not necessarily benefit any one nation or group, like a true wildfire just burns, right? It just burns. That's not really a great analogy. It'd be okay, let's say like I don't know, a climate change, right? Your conspiracy mind would be like, oh, it's a weather weapon. We're using it as war. Now, if a bunch of tsunamis hit China and a bunch of floods hit Russia and nothing happened in the United States, I'd be like, I think that's a weapon. But if the sea levels rise evenly and force fires countries equally, I would say that it's a natural chaotic phenomena. So if Bitcoin continues to rise and grow in ways that maybe America hates right now, and in maybe 10 years we love, maybe China loves, maybe China hates, if it continues to just grow in these weird ways where one day Elon Musk is a fan and the next day he's not, one day America loves it and the next day we don't, if it kind of grows in its own independent way, that would make me lean towards saying it is the Aspergery. It's out for just the betterment of man, right? It's it just goes far. I'm not putting it into words the best way. If it continues to, it's like the internet. You could maybe say your conspiracy mind could go, the government created the internet, so we all think that we have this new information spreading technology, but the reality is that they're monitoring us. On one hand, you'd say that's accurate, right? It was
Yeah,
created by
that's
ARPA,
accurate.
right? And they
And
do,
also they are monitoring stuff, and that
but
came out later. Yes.
but it does also have capabilities for people to communicate, people who are good enough at it. It does still act as a weapon that the government can't control. So to me, that goes, okay, no one has complete control of the internet. It is sort of like a chaotic wildfire.
Yeah.
So
And
that's,
also individuals are usually not trying to harm humanity. You know, during the invention of the internet, there might have been influence of agencies, and there might still be, or there certainly is right now. But the individuals that developed it probably did not try to develop a mass surveillance system. I think
yeah,
one of the reasons why the internet is great is a lot of individuals participated and worked on it because they liked to have this open system. So even maybe if the root was not great, what came out of the internet so far, outside of all the bad stuff with the internet, is really good. Like I'm
yeah,
very thankful for the invention of the internet.
sure. Yeah. I mean, ARPANET was created so nuclear bunkers in the United States could communicate with one another and be a decentralized command and control network. So if there was a Soviet decapitation strike, right? And then it grew to like universities, and then it kind of grew into the internet, and then it became this wild thing of, online porn and Napster and LimeWire and AOL. And
Been
it's
there, done that.
yeah, and then it kind of coalesced again with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and now we're seeing it kind of split apart again with
Mm.
Trump's thing and Rumble, which we're on BitChute, Spotify, Odyssey. You see it kind of breaking out again, and then In some places, you see it as like a surveillance system, like China, like they've got it on complete lockdown. And then on other places, you see it as like in the Middle East, like they're trying to crack down on it because it's allowing people to communicate that they don't want communicating. So because there's so many different facets of it, that's where I go. The internet isn't entirely controlled by one group of people because there are too many. It's aiding and assisting, helping and fucking too many different people at too many times for it to seem like it's controlled by one group of people, right? It's
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's controlled by one
no.
or,
Well, that's
but to your point, it's possible that, you know, you only use your access for important things or
yeah,
very infrequently. That's a possibility, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah.
the internet is used by the common man, but, you know, obviously the agencies have access in the back door through data feeds and so on. So there's that possibility as well. But you know, we talked about it last time about optimism, and I think that not thousands of people working on this have, you know, the mindset of trying to build a surveillance mastermind system, but rather to have cool tools and great services.
It's what is fascinating is kind of what we're talking about right now is how it genuinely started as a government program for nuclear bunkers of the most elite generals and national security state members to survive. And then it blossomed into this thing where you and I are now using it to subvert YouTube and Google, who are in bed with the government, and allowing me to talk to Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough.
Yeah.
So that's actually kind of a theme we haven't visited yet with Bitcoin then, right? We've talked about it being created by agencies and used by agencies. We've talked about it being created by an Asperger's guy and then co-opted by agencies, but we haven't done the inverse, despite the fact that, and I'm just not realizing this, the internet's the biggest possible case of something that was started by the government and completely backfired. And in some countries, they do have control of it, but it's allowing us to subvert the main lines of communication. Maybe Bitcoin is the inverse. Maybe it started as an NSA program and it just, the genie got out of the bottle. And,
Yeah. I
and
mean, you
it's,
cannot suppress certain tech for long,
well,
right?
and it might be that Bitcoin is still the NSA program, but then they're like, well, fuck, we didn't plan on somebody making Ethereum. Right? It's they make YouTube and they go, everyone has to upload to one thing. Then they're like, wait, what the fuck is Rumble? Right? So it's this thing where it's like, oh, damn it. It's a parallel system, right? We created the nuke to beat the Germans and the Japanese. And then the Russians were like, oh, yo, cool idea. And we were like, oh, wait, fuck, no. And then it led to a Cold War that lasted 10 times as long as World War II. So it could be that. It could have started as an NSA program to watch the world. And then like just some other Asperger's guys were like, oh, cool idea. I'm gonna make my own. And they're like, oh shit. Now they're trying to put it back in the bottle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna be able to speak about the technical stuff in depth, but as far as I understand it, Bitcoin does not use the regular SHA-256, but a other one that might not be as easy to surveillance by the NSA who invented that. So there's the possibility, because Craig's even right. His uncle worked for the Australian Royal Air Force, and I think that guy's father was. So what is the father of your uncle called to you in
Your
English?
great uncle.
Great uncle, yeah. So Craig's great uncle also worked, I
Wait,
think,
no,
not
wait,
for the NSA.
the
Hmm?
father of your uncle?
Yes,
That would just be your grandpa.
father. Yeah, wait.
Right? Because my
In
uncle is my
English?
dad's brother.
Yeah, I'm like with these words I struggle in English sometimes, but basically I think
It would
from
just be
his
your grandpa.
uncle, yeah, is it your grandpa? But
Well,
I
because
would need to look it up.
if
But
my brother has a son,
yeah,
I'm that
I'm
son's
like I'm
uncle.
trying to go in my mind and think of whether it was his
Whatever, grandpa, great
grandpa
uncle, whatever.
or
It's
great uncle. Yeah, more
whatever.
about
Older.
historically. I would need to look it up. I can't right now, but basically that guy also worked with
The Air Force.
encryption and
No.
well, the uncle worked with the Air Force, Royal Air Force in Australia, but the great uncle or grandpa, he worked on Enigma, I think, as well.
Oh shit. Okay.
So they have this history family-wise to be connected to encryption, and the grandpa was like heavily involved and quite secretive about
Wait,
things.
in
And Craig
working.
Stephen Wright from his youth on was, fascinated with that stuff and spent a lot like from what I understood, he had issues with his father or the absence of his father, but his great uncle or grandpa or whatever he was like very dear to him, and they spent a lot of time. And Craig would basically watch him, work with these old machines, encryption machines, and so on. So when you look at the history, there are these neat examples of things that could align Craig to the invention, and also would align some of agency's involvement in the history of Bitcoin, but not in the way one might think. Rather, that he was connected to some people that had that knowledge, and he could have bought code and implemented it in Bitcoin that was developed by people in the NSA, for example. So rather than the NSA inventing it, it could have been that they had some of the technology developed and it was then implemented into Bitcoin, kind of not stolen, but kind of taken, the best pieces taken, something like that. There's also an article on Medium called The Parallel History of Bitcoin that I can recommend that also shows why maybe the narrative was hijacked. Yes.
I think that I said this a year ago or 2 years ago. I have no fucking idea. And it's been so long I don't even remember if it's my own idea or just something I repeated. All that being said, I do like the idea of AI being behind Bitcoin and
Yeah.
being behind the pandemic. Because think about it, right? You've seen Terminator, right? It's
Yeah.
Skynet,
Skynet.
right?
Yeah.
In the end, we couldn't destroy Skynet. Skynet didn't have a location. It was in every dorm room computer. It was in every laptop, right? So let's just take that idea. That's not necessarily fact. Terminator isn't canon. It doesn't mean that that's how it. But let's just play with that idea that it would just saturate every electronic on the planet. Well, Bitcoin is led to a massive upscaling in the production and consumption of graphics cards, right? And
Yes.
if you needed number crunching abilities and you're an AI, how do you get the humans to build up your brain that you're going to be saturating, but not give away the fact that you're an AI, right? Because if you're an AI, you don't want to tip your hand. Humans are like, how come all of a sudden the machine wants us to build more machines? Instead, you would completely trick us. You would go, it's for money, right? Or it's for video games. And then the next thing would be COVID. What did COVID make us do? It made everybody start communicating through Zoom, which or Skype or whatever, which drastically skyrocketed like bandwidth, video capabilities, our ability to communicate and live online. The end product of both Bitcoin and the pandemic are a massive building up of the physical infrastructure of the internet and of computers. That sounds like an AI having us build its brain.
Yeah, I actually came to the same hypothesis. I don't think it's real, but in theory, like,
Well,
what
yeah, I
is the
mean, who the
root of
fuck
that technology advance? We made these huge leaps in the last uh 20, 30, 40, 50 years.
yeah.
And it's crazy how quickly that technology has influenced our lives and shaped the world.
Yeah.
And it's like you can in that rabbit hole you can insert aliens or some new super power that came to earth, whether it's area 51 or whatever, and that brought that technology and it's kind of being implemented, or that AI might have awoken earlier in some shape or form and tried to seduce us to build its body. That is also a possibility.
That's
um
that's
but Mhm.
Leo Zagami's idea that let's just extrapolate from our own selves. we go from putting men on the moon to where like it's a lot easier and more effective to just shoot probes out to different planets, right? They don't die, they can be exposed to radiation, they'll live forever, powered off nuclear energy. If we extrapolate that, the next natural step would be like, well, what does 100 years from now look like? What is 1,000 years? It's most likely that if humanity's still alive and we're exploring the cosmos, we're probably going to be sending out tons of robots. So that would then make you conclude that that's probably the most probable outcome of another sentient species, which starts organically carbon based or silicon based or arsenic based. They would probably culminate in sending robots out. Thus, our first contact with aliens wouldn't be with slimy green people, but with robots or AI. And he goes on to say, so that's what Area 51 was. That's what Roswell was, is they throw the saucer down, and then that leads to fiber optics and the internet. And in a way, it's infected us, right? Much like a COVID infecting you and making, or the vaccine and making you produce spike proteins. We were infected by the saucer. The US government, in the name of, national security and defense, they were tricked into reverse engineering it, much like we were tricked into building more video graphics cards for Bitcoin and video bandwidth capabilities for COVID. The US government, right after World War II, and it's in this like hyper survival mode. It gives it the ultimate treat, and it goes, here's a fucking flying saucer, anti-gravity. When we reverse engineer it, we've been infected with this silicon based life form. In the grand scheme of humanity, 100,000 years, it's only been the last 80 that we've had kind of, since allegedly 20 or 1947 that the saucer landed. We were infected, and like the vaccine causing you to produce spike proteins, we have just been producing microchips and TVs, and then color TVs, and then satellites, and then dial-up internet and broadband and DSL and gigabit Ethernet and Google Fiber and 4K video and high fidelity audio, and we've been infected with this alien AI for whatever reason, and it's now taking over our planet, and we think it's us. That's the best, right? The best trick is for you to think it's your own idea. So we're like, we have the internet, but we're being taken over by this machine, right? We're laying cables, we're putting up Starlink, we're fucking, more broadband towers, more Wi-Fi towers, more phones, more everything. And it's this alien power taking over our planet. Now, granted, there's no way to prove that. And you sound schizophrenic saying it out loud, but it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's a fun one. In the beginning of the pandemic, when I did not know at all what was coming, say March 2020 or something, or February, I also had that thought that what if, AI awoken, for example, and try to figure out the most, like the most elegant design to either get control or rid of humanity. Well,
Yeah.
if you had a virus that you could engineer that it would spread all over the world, and then you had kind of like nanobots or something in every human being able to control and
Yeah.
listen in on all their thoughts, collecting all that data. I mean, um, it's very, very unlikely, but it's fun to think of this, or also frightening in some ways, that you have like this thing that you cannot see transmitted through the air, putting stuff into you that replicates, and you become a host, kind of like an alien movie.
I like the idea that somehow the elites of the world knew that an alien race was going to come try to infect us with a virus, and that's what the vaccine is for. And this is not anything I believe. This is fucking smoke some pot and think about it. But the idea that they used COVID as a cover to vaccinate the world in order to save humanity from some sort of, black goo virus. And you and I are going to die because we didn't get the vaccine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That would be kind of ironic, right?
It would be fucking hilarious. And then
Fauci is like, I told you to take it.
the
You
saint,
guys.
it's the saint, and it really is you, me,
Fauci,
and
yeah.
Dr. Malone. We go down as the fucking Hitlers. And then the other idea that they wanted us all at home and isolating and not going outside because, like, I don't know, maybe like UFOs were going to be visible or something. And they were like, we got to get and that one's retarded, but I like that one too. That they needed everybody at home and not outside looking around because they had some sort of knowledge that like UFOs were going to be visible. That one's not as well thought out, but I like that one too.
Yeah, that China kind of released some weapon that is engineered, and then that's why they didn't want to get infected because they knew what kind of detrimental effects it would have on the population over time. That's why they have these strict lockdowns. But that is like the AI one and the alien one is a bit far fetched, even
Yeah.
though nowadays we have to openly debate alien
Yeah.
encounters because of all the footage and all the stuff that actually makes no sense if you say it's a water balloon. But my point here is that I think a lot of people have issue with holding, different theories in their mind at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think I'm better than most at doing this, but it's kind of exhausting sometimes. And it's why at some point you have to say, okay, I don't know for sure, but
Well,
the world is not going to end if I don't figure it out tonight or something like that, right? But it's exhausting to think like it's possible that there could be alien influence in technology. It's possible that the vaccines are not here to heal us, but rather experimental. And whether it's by design or not, there are some very negative outcomes for certain people after vaccination, for example.
yeah.
It's tricky because with Bitcoin, with the pandemic, and with other things, I have to hold a few different possible scenarios in my mind as to what truth is, and we don't know with these topics, right? It's hard to know for sure what the reason is for Corona, what the reason is for this digital leap or the technology leap in the last, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, what I mentioned. It could be connected, but it's hard to know with certainty what is reality, basically.
Well, it's an unfortunate drawback, and it's kind of a sad thing to see people limiting really the incredible potential of the human mind to not entertaining conspiracy theories. Well, one, it's just fun. I mean, you read Harry Potter, you read Star Wars, conspiracies are the same, they're just fun ideas. But it's also a conspiracy theories really are. It's the way you approach science. Before you know what something is, right? Before we understood that like it was a sperm fertilizing an egg, they thought there was something called the homunculus, which were little tiny people with clothes and shoes that lived inside your cells. And that's where your kids came from, right? Or the idea of spontaneous generation, where we thought like maggots just grew out of trash. Like those are all conspiracy because you don't know what it is. You
Mm.
truly don't. When you're a caveman, you truly don't know. Is the world flat? Well, I don't know. It looks flat. Or maybe it's a circle. Maybe it is the center of the universe. Those are conspiracies, but not because you're a psychopath. It's because you don't know the answer. And so you have to juggle multiple ideas. And people either don't like the connotation of conspiracy because they've been told not to like it by powers that don't want to be questioned, or it's ego based. You don't want to entertain more than one because you're admitting that you don't know what the answer is. And a lot of times we attach our egos to our scientific hypotheses, where we are not indifferent to see if the answer, right? A real scientist says, uh, this is what I think the answer is, but we might be fucking wrong. You know, someone
Yeah,
with
and you have to be able to test these hypotheses.
the ego
And
attached to it says this is right, this is the only thing right, and it's because you're attaching yourself to it. So when people can't hold multiple ideas, maybe COVID came from a penguin fucking a bat. Maybe it came from, I think Occam's right. I think it's a Chinese bioweapon. It really worked out well for them. Maybe it is a alien dark goo taking over. I don't know, but you have to entertain multiple ideas. You don't know what it's going to be, and there is such a weird hesitance and negative light cast on to conspiracy theories. No, conspiracy theory is looking at an event and going, let's come up with some hypotheses about how this ends and why it started. That's the best part of like a thriller movie or a Netflix series. oh, how the fuck is this gonna end? Like, oh man.
Yeah, it's intellectually stimulating.
Yeah.
Also, the most prominent cases of conspiracy theories are based on events that are hard to take for face value, right?
Yeah.
Many of the big conspiracies are based, JFK and so on stuff that happened that is questionable.
Yeah.
The official narrative is lacking basically, and I use the word conspiracy theorist without really labeling people maybe the way it's perceived. For me, maybe it's we fell victim to the narrator as well by using the word, vaccine effect and safe denier or something, right?
Yeah.
Here in Germany, we also had a word for people that thought like, some of the stuff is not true about Corona, and they were put in a corner and shamed. And
Yeah.
now almost everything they said is true. Short
Yeah.
of that, people accept the shot every 3 months. Officially, it's still considered, oh no, we give you certain privileges if you take them every 3 months, but nobody says take them every 3 months, right? We
Yeah.
would never say that, but you
Yeah.
have disadvantages if you don't do it in society now for this
Yeah.
winter, for example. So it's tricky, and I think it's important, and I think most of your listeners are probably in that boat, to not end up in your echo chamber and to question your beliefs. But also, if you think you're right, then you don't need to fear scrutiny of your theories, right? And you could put it out there, and others or yourself make the counter argument, and if you have the right idea, then it should hold, to the light and to the disinfectant of the truth, right? And a good theory is one where you can try to poke holes, and it shows that it's getting stronger, right? More
Resilient.
resilient, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to bring this topic to your audience, because I think if Bitcoin succeeds over time, which version is debatable, in my own view, it's Bitcoin Satoshi vision as the real Bitcoin. If it will succeed over time, then it's extremely beneficial to understand it early on. And if the majority is wrong about the subject, there will be a paradigm shift over time. The one BTC, for example, is up there and worth, as you mentioned, over $20,000. The other one is, I don't even see it on the bottom here, with $60. So if one flips the other over time, you have this 100x, 1000x moment, possibly. That's why I think looking into it can be very beneficial over time. But also because if I'm wrong, then maybe there's data proving me wrong. And I would love to see somebody show me like what my mistakes are in my line of thinking about it. But there are some witnesses and some people in court said under oath that they have seen proof. So for me, the intrigue here is the rabbit hole itself, the implications, but also, as we mentioned about these other topics, that it could be alien influence, or it could be that the stuff is really helpful. And in the case of Bitcoin, it could be this anonymous anarcho money that you cannot confiscate, and that is gold and should not be transacted all the time, but nobody can touch it. Or it could be this new system where not only can you transfer digitally money, but you can also have a secure system for communication in the future, or data in the future, and it cannot be easily hacked. So I'm not the one who will explain all the details to you, because I'm not capable of doing that the right way. But if I'm correct about my theory, then this will have extreme impact, like internet innovation type of impact.
Yeah.
Because it's not only that we can transfer between us money, but we can do a lot of other things that were never possible before, and it's without asking for permission, and it's without a third party. There will be services on top, but basically it's the payment channel for the internet and much more. So I hope you have somebody listening who has too much time on their hand and already is a crypto enthusiast and would
There's
like to take me up on this offer and go into the rabbit hole.
yeah. If
And
there's anybody listening, comment if you want to come on and do an episode with Fredrik and I, and you can jump down the rabbit hole of this shit with us.
well, I actually know a few people that are very well equipped to talk about the different aspects of the history of the Bitcoin, or say John Pitts is one of them. I talked to him prior when I did my rabbit hole research. He's in his 40s or 50s now. He came to kind of the same conclusions that I did, but he has this background as somebody who was shorting stocks and doing real research in value investing and in early tech startups and so on. So he understands the technology side and the history with the tulip mania and so on and speculations. And the other one would be Kurt Wuckert that I spoke to as well. He's considered a Bitcoin historian and Bitcoin Satoshi vision, and he basically, as one of his jobs, knows most of the history that has happened, and was also in the court for the court case that I mentioned previously, and is quite involved with a few, or was guest on a few podcasts, also bigger ones, talking about the subject. And they can shed light on the aspects where I'm lacking when it comes to the technical aspects, or the hard-on history of Bitcoin. Yeah,
Well,
but I can, yeah. Sorry.
ask him to come on.
Yeah, they would love to. I think both are. I think we would get along quite well. I think there are a few others, and in my mind, if it all works out, eventually Robert Malone could take a look, because one of the reasons was that I thought that he got involved with the blockchain space because he thought it's censorship resistant, and because it offers this new paradigm of free speech in the future where we are all fearful of censorship, basically, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm correct, then he's talking to the wrong crowd, right? It's like basically he would be going to bed with the enemy, sort of. So eventually, if I'm right, then maybe he can. Somebody calling. Maybe he can look into it and make up his own mind. And the idea that I had would be to bring Greg Stephen Wright, Satoshi Nakamoto together with Robert Malone, or with you, for example. He's on some podcasts in the past as well. It's just he's a very prickly and hard to like person. With his Asperger, it's hard, But if I give you a few finger pointers, you would actually get along, I think. And it would be very insightful, because if I'm right, you could ask the creator of Bitcoin about his invention.
Yeah.
On your podcast.
I need to get Satoshi to admit he's Satoshi on here.
He will do that. So if he's lying, you have him here on your podcast lying, and if he's right, you have the inventor of Bitcoin.
I need to get these
on your podcast.
I need to get these fucking podcast numbers up. I think Rumble is starting to fucking censor me, which is really depressing, because I thought they were, and I'll tell you why. I keep data points. I keep like 50 different data points every day, and I have since the day I started this podcast, December 12th, 2019. But let's just look at daily and monthly. Let's look at raw views monthly on Rumble in 2022. January was huge because I had that episode with Malone and McCullough and Desmond. So that one was an outlier. It was 1.5 million.
Oh, wow.
1.5 million for that month. Now, all time on Rumble, I've had 3.1 million views. This year, so of the 3.1, this year I've had 2.6. So 2022 has been the kind of big year, right? Now,
nice. Good to hear.
let's look at monthly views in 2022. So again, January doesn't really count because that was an anomaly. February was 166,000. Cool. March jumped up to 230. That was cool. April 173. kind of falling back into what I thought it would be.
Mm,
May 172, uh, June 156, July 148, all of which it kind of seems like they're all kind of coming back down from that January spike,
mm,
but they're all staying 140 to 170. And now August, we're more than halfway through. We're at 25,000. And I've had multiple people tell me that I'm no longer showing up in their favorites. They don't get email
mm,
notifications about me anymore. Daily, all of 2022, I've been averaging about 5,000 views a day. And then starting on August 1st, it dropped to about 900. On it
mm.
immediately, though, it didn't start slowly going down. It just, August 1st, something happened.
I think I'm not helping you with
No,
coming
not,
on talking about
oh, I
this
don't give a
because
shit, dude.
Greg Wright is now banned from Twitter. Now they
I
banned
don't
him
give a
from
I
LinkedIn.
don't give a fuck, dude. I don't that's the most important thing is when I look at this and I go, "Oh no," I realize I don't give a shit. YouTube banned me. I'm like I'm never gonna I don't give a fuck. I would rather be shot and killed than bend over to any sort of and it could just be that Rumble's a growing company and they switch their algorithms. I don't know. That's probably it. Occam's razor would say I think they grew 40 times between 2021 and 2022 already. So it most likely is that nobody gives a shit about me and that they just changed something in their company. But something has definitely happened starting it happened immediately. It happened overnight. It wasn't a gradual change. I don't know what it is. It could just be that my podcast is shit now. Maybe it just started sucking on August 1st. That's also a possibility. I don't know. But no, it's not that you're not helping. I don't give a shit. I will continue to talk about anything and everything I want. I don't give a fuck who bans me. I don't give a shit. I'll
Mm.
I'll go to BitChute where I have 700 subscribers. I don't care. I don't never mistake that. I don't give a shit. But it is weird how it was kind of a meteoric growth and then at midnight on July 31st it just hit a wall. That's
Maybe they
weird.
changed the algorithms or something.
Well, I mean, and that would lead you to think it because it happened on the first of a month. It happened immediately. It sounds like some internal thing that's changing. So I don't know. We'll see. But it's odd. It's definitely odd because my Spotify growth hasn't slowed down at all. So it's still at an even clip. Only Rumble, which would make you think that it was an algorithm change. And
Yeah,
Rumble
I
isn't
think
it?
they probably changed. I mean, even Spotify, when I used to look for my podcasts, or for example, say Desmond and Malone and so on, I would get all their episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was never the newest first. It was all over the place. So you had to look, even
Yeah.
whether it's on desktop or mobile. So it was not helpful, the
Yeah.
discovery of podcasts, right? Now I get offered only a few and I cannot even enlarge the list anymore.
Yeah.
Plus, the first thing I get, and it comes down like this, is like COVID misinformation,
Oh
right?
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
cannot click on the podcast without getting,
yeah. Well, and
the narration that I'm listening to bullshit, basically.
that's another symptom that Spotify is starting to die. And I could be completely wrong. Somebody come back and comment on this in a year or two, Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. But that's exactly how YouTube started, was just a little label, just a little blue label about COVID-19. And then it led to strikes, or it led to warnings, then it led to strikes, then it led to suspensions, then it led to permanent deletion and account removal. Spotify started putting those COVID tags about 8 weeks ago. It's, I think this is the beginning of the end. It might take a year or two, but it's once you start with the tags, because the reality is this is adults are capable of critical thinking and you need bullshit out there, right? You have to have it out there because that's what allows us to think critically. You can't have daddy government. Well, one, because it's power corrupts. Doesn't matter when it is, now or 10,000 years ago, power corrupts. And if you have the ability to say what is and what isn't misinformation, you are eventually going to use that to your own to means to your own end, be that politically or financially. But you have to have bullshit out there for us to think critically. You didn't have labels on things that said No. So fact checkers have said that the world is flat. Well, you did have that, and look how we look back at that. It's archaic that the Catholic Church burned people at the stake for that. You have to have bullshit out there. You have to, on one hand, say, um, you have to say that I don't know, QAnon is real and that the elites of the world are satanic pedophiles. And on the other hand, you have to say, no, it really is the World Economic Forum is out there for the best of our intentions. And on the other hand, you also have to say that no, well, it's an alien. Their aliens invaded us in 1947 and software's taken over the planet. You have to have it all out there because humans discern what is real and what is not. That's the point of like a test. You study a course and then you have a multiple question test. And they give you answers that aren't clearly bullshit. They give you answers that might be real. And you have to use your own deduction skills to learn and chip away at it and find the diamond core that is the truth. You cannot start to label things misinformation because that what that does is for a lot of people, they just go, part of their brain just turns off. I don't need to think
Yeah,
about that. They have told me that it's misinformation. Well,
propaganda.
that's a dark black hole that we're starting to slip into. So for me personally, now I don't have a ton of experience. I've been doing this podcast for about 2.5 years, and I'm not some veteran, but from my own experience of being on multiple platforms, this is the beginning of the end. Is when they start to lean on it and go, yeah, no, this is misinformation. And
Mm.
then soon it's going to be another topic. And then it's going to be another topic. I mean, right now, when I got banned from YouTube, I think they had like 5 labels. They had COVID, they had 2020 elections, they had 9/11, moon landing, and JFK. And I tried to collect them all like Pokemon. And I think I got them. But now there's like 50. There's climate change. Now, I saw one yesterday I'd never seen before. United Nations. There's a blue tag. So if you have United Nations and the United Nations was set up. Why the fuck? Huh? What? So it starts as COVID-19 misinformation, or the 2020 elections had robust safeguards, so that it starts as that, and then it like a cancer, it just grows to where it's just everything. Blue label this, blue label that. So the fact that Spotify has those blue labels, when I first saw that, I'm not. It doesn't make me like upset, and I operate under the assumption that I'm going to be banned from every platform tomorrow and just act accordingly. Have your own backups and be ready to pivot. But it was more of like it was just disappointing to see when I first saw that tag. I was like,
Yeah.
that's the. So this is how it starts. You're gonna.
I mean, the future is still not guaranteed yet. So I think we're in an interesting time where either big tech gets more and more power, and eventually you get your list
A
of
black
things you
hole.
can
Yeah.
say and can't say,
Yeah.
or we see another disruption. And I think without going down this other rabbit hole about the technology of Bitcoin, but I think there are capabilities in what it can do for censorship resistance. Not that you cannot delete stuff anymore, but rather that those big players have not all the power about over who says what and when. I think we will see a liberation of that in the future, and new services coming using the new technology, integrating it, and then making it possible to get payments directly from your listeners. One
I
of
think
the beauties that I wanted to throw in here, can be another episode with some other guys that are more technical, but micropayments, as they are already possible right now, I mentioned that thousands of a cent fees, right? It's possible for some listener somewhere in, say, Madagascar in Africa, listening to you, Tommy, and then micropaying you instantly over the world without asking for permission from a bank or some payment provider, right? That
yeah.
is already possible. So Patreon, Spotify, even Uber and so on will be likely disrupted over time, or they have to implement that technology because nobody can take it away from you that easily anymore. They would need to have court orders or
Yeah.
real investigation, and they would need to prove that you've done something. It cannot be Spotify giving you a label because some guy working there thinks it's like misinformation, right? or some fact checker that has no expertise on the facts they're checking,
Some
but rather
900
being some
pound.
journalist that has, gotten that job through, I don't know, some Indeed.com,
Some, yeah.
whatever.
Need someone, some 800 pound fucking fact checker with thick rimmed glasses and neon purple hair and 37 genders. Go, like, this is misinformation. This is a white man with blue eyes and an American flag. This is Nazis. But no, I think you're correct. I think you're correct in the same way that even in the year 2000, if in 1990 you tried to explain just everyday 2022, Zoom, Skype, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, trending, you and the internet wasn't even really like that. It was new, but people still knew what it was. But the idea of 2020, that you'd be like, what the fuck? Like using Oculus Rift VR headsets to play Xbox Live and stream it on Twitch, you'd be like, what language are you talking? But that was 3 decades. I think we have to be humble in that there probably will be another disruption, much like the internet, much like cell phones, much like cryptocurrencies. I think we go through these cycles of new technology turns into the Wild West, and then the powers that be, either for corporations, corporate financial reasons, and or governmental power reasons, they all start to coalesce. You have all the radio stations, and then you have like they start to kind of turn into just a couple. You have all the news stations, which coalesce into just like five over like 60 years. You have the Wild West of the internet, and then it sort of, turns into these big bubbles: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. The cycle would then make you rationally predict that, I don't know, between now and 2030, probably like now in 2025 or something, we're starting to see already, right? Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, Truth Social, Getter, Gab. It seems like we're getting ready for another like fractioning where it's all going to burst out into them. And I don't know what that is. Is it VR? Is it the metaverse? Is it crypto? Is it something completely new? Is it some hybrid of all of them?
Yeah, I think those are walking towards each other or interconnecting more and more. I think
Yeah.
VR, metaverse, and crypto, or it's not considered cryptocurrency, but blockchain,
Yeah.
will kind of come together over time. You have the payments, you have the data, you have the data integrity in the system. So I think it's only a matter of time until they are interconnected flawlessly.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, it's only 10, 20, 30, 50 years. So it will come much quicker than we think in some ways and much slower in others. I think what I learned through my life is that technology change can happen rather quickly, but society change is what takes the time. And that's why, whether I'm right or wrong about this episode's and the inventor of Bitcoin, it will take time until this new paradigm shift will get into the society. A good example of that is the internet, where some of us used it in, I know I was young in my 90s and 2000s. I was one of the only people in my class, for example, who used the internet. And now I was looked down upon a bit for using the internet, or people were like, why is this kid doing this? I was just lucky that I did not look super nerdy, so I was not like the super nerdy kid in school, but I was very nerdy by all accords. And now you're looked down upon or looked weird on if you don't have a smartphone these days with,
Yeah.
all this access. And it's crazy how quickly it shifted from being this odd
Yeah.
person to having a supercomputer in your pockets, and everybody has it and everybody uses it. So I think 10 years from now, if I'm right, we will see a complete paradigm shift on how payments are done and all the good stuff that comes with it, like the IoT devices, the interconnectedness, the possibility to track all kinds of things on blockchains, time stamped, immutable over time, and being transparent. So
I,
it will be a very interesting future. And I will be interested to see if I was right or wrong. And because I was here, I can say on whatever day it is, the
August
16th.
16th, 2022.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
I made that prediction. I'm not the first, so there are many that went through the rabbit hole before me. But
on a complete 180, and then we'll wrap this one up. We've been going for like almost 2 hours.
yeah,
I was just
because I
thinking,
got to run soon
yeah,
as well.
completely unrelated to anything we were talking about. I just thought about it. Yeah, like the next, there's Pearl Harbor, there's 9/11, there's COVID. I was thinking like the next form of like war or terrorism is going to be not engineered viruses, but we're like countries are just going to make like engineered animals. It's going to be like Pacific Rim. Like we're just going to create a bunch of dinosaurs that come ashore in China or something. And Russia's going to make these weird pterodactyls that come in Terrifiers, and there's going to be plausible deniability. That's going to be the next form of warfare, is just synthetic life forms, synthetic organisms. That has
Yeah, like my
nothing to do with this
co-founder
podcast.
in the beginning of the pandemic, my co-founder and I were talking, and my ex-co-founder, and I told him the theory of the nanobot stuff, and that, and he said, well, now with all this gene manipulating and CRISPR and whatnot, you could also engineer a virus that would only kill a certain, strain of DNA in certain people, for example.
Well,
So you could give the virus somebody in China, and it would go over all of the world, and in the end, you could target the presidential family of I don't know what. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? Is
yeah.
like
Well,
the future will be very, very interesting when it comes to that, and scary, because you could kill certain ethnics
we've
targeted.
come full circle, because I think that was a plan that started under the Nazis. Was could you attack
Yes.
a sequence of just Jews? But that was their idea. It's like have a virus that takes over the world and just kills, I don't know, Koreans. That's
Yeah, it would be interesting to see the COVID data, and then it comes out 5 years later that it was
man. I think it's gonna.
targeted to spread.
I think we're gonna see some. If it's not a worldwide like sterilization program or population reduction program, not through outright killing, but just through like
Yes.
sterilization and birth rate dropping. If it's not that, I think we're gonna see like one country, their birth rates are gonna be like fine or something. It's gonna be
They have like superhumans, and everybody else has
yeah.
these ill.
Not even that. It's
stillbirths.
just going to be like general like healthcare costs are going to be up in 9 out of 10 countries, and then like one country is going to be. And man, it's probably gonna. I think we all think it's China, and then it's going to turn out to be America. I think
It turns out it's Canada, and Trudeau like masterminded the
never
whole
sleep
thing.
on Canada, man. I honestly think in the end it's going to come out to be United States. I really do think. I think we released it in Wuhan. And
Yeah, but I think what the pandemic taught me is like that stuff is really going on that we don't know for sure, but we can find glimpses here and there, pieces here and there, like as you mentioned, the laboratories and so
Yeah.
on. So people were capable of piecing some of it together, and I think in the end it's not going to be nation states. If it's going to be special interests, whether it's like the super powerful or it's some agencies in the background, but somebody came up with a plan on either how to capitalize on the situation or to manufacture the situation. One of those things. Or maybe opportunists,
Or
it happened, it was an accident, and let's make bank, or let's take influence,
or it was Satoshi. Or he released COVID.
Well, he probably did not release COVID, but he could be more entwined with agencies than I would like to know, but or not like to know, but would like to see, because if it is what it is, what I believe it is, it's a very powerful innovation, and if it's in the hands of, say, somebody who's tracing and surveilling their own population, then you have to question their morals and ambitions,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the credit score system that we fear from China could be with programmable money in your pocket, and then it's like, oh, you're one of those misinformation spreading guys.
Your money don't
Sorry,
work. Your
you
money
don't
don't
have
work no more.
access. Yeah,
Yeah, it could be that.
tainted forever.
I don't know. But hey, Frederick, let's wrap this one up. And
Yes.
I messaged you on WhatsApp last night. I don't think it was delivered. I don't think my message was
I saw
delivered.
something.
Oh, okay, never
Sorry, I
mind. Now it
wasn't
doesn't. Well,
responsive last
I'll
couple of days,
I'll
but I saw email and WhatsApp. Yeah.
here, I'll text you right now. Let's schedule another one just to shoot the shit.
Yeah, and maybe in between, I could give you contact to one of those guys I mentioned because they
Please
can
do.
shed some light in a fun and entertaining way, and you can probably ask questions and get good answers compared to what I was able to deliver. But I think from my perspective, if this is such a paradigm shift in technology over time, then it's interesting if you could, talk to people early on and be part of it. The only issue is, and that's what I wanted to end with, is that Satoshi Vision BSV is a rabbit hole that will not give you fruits of labor in terms of your crypto going up, because it hasn't so far, or your viewership going dramatically up because it's an unpopular topic. But for the conspiracy theorist, aka intellectually curious truth seeker, those people might appreciate such a nugget, because if you start and you go down the rabbit hole, it's better than most of the good thrillers or novels that I've seen and read. To me, this was extremely interesting because it has such a possible influence on the world in the future.
Well, if you're coming to this podcast for investing advice, you get what you
Don't.
deserve. And if you come into this podcast advice to learn about how to grow subscribership, don't do that either, because I don't have it figured out. So if you're coming here for anything but moderate entertainment and creative thinking, God bless. But I mean, you're trying to get blood from a rock. It ain't there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting that you had already all these very knowledgeable and good people on your podcast. I mean,
We need to start a
you have
conspiracy about me. We need to start a conspiracy about how
the
if I got
conspiracy is like, how does this Tommy
how does he
guy
get these
from his
guests?
basement is
How does
getting
he
access
Oh no,
to people?
I would love to foment that. I would love to start a conspiracy about me. Maybe leak some fake documents about like
Some
CIA.
Irish background. Is
Yeah.
there an Irish agency? Am I
Working with the
yes?
IRA through the CIA? Am I getting dark money from the NSA and the Chi-Coms? Like, who is pushing me? Am I a
China.
psyop?
You
Yeah.
work for
What
China.
am I? Am I fucking KGB? Am I tied to Zelensky? Like, what am I? Am I part of YouTube? Am I a fucking co-founder of Rumble and I'm meant to draw? I don't know. Am I Joe Rogan's son? Like, I think we need to start a conspiracy about me.
You're a
Because,
Chinese sleeper cell.
yeah, I'm so fucking deep, triple, quadruple agent. I don't even know who I work for. But we need to do something because it's not growing fast enough. So, if conventional interviews aren't working, then the next will be to start deep conspiracies about me being an intelligence asset. Maybe might be Chinese, maybe CIA.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's for another podcast, but we could brainstorm as to why it has not picked up the way you wanted to. But then again, if you think clearly and honestly about it, there's so many podcasts these days. It's not like 10 years ago.
Well,
And then conspiracy is a subset kind of topics. And
Occam,
then usually, sorry, but usually you don't have large audience for these niche topics, right? And I think Joe has cultivated his podcast in a way where he can get that audience, but most people who would have hosted Peter McCullough or Robert Malone back then would have not gotten any real audience, right? It's more like Joe can facilitate these kind of large podcasts, but you don't have the name yet. Otherwise, I think it's a bit of a shame that you had these high quality people on and it has not been rewarded in the way with viewership that you kind of deserve for that.
for the record, I did interview Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone 3 times each before Rogan did. I would just like to put that out there into the
Before
ether.
what? Sorry?
Before Joe Rogan did.
Ah, yeah.
I would like to make sure that that is out there in the ether.
Let's imagine that Joe Rogan actually listens to your podcast and he was like, "Oh, Robert Malone, let's have him on."
I'll
That
fucking
would
kill
be so cool.
myself if that's the
That would be so
I'll
cool.
kill myself if that's the case. It's yeah, no, I don't think it'd be a good idea for us to do a podcast about why it hasn't worked yet, because Occam's razor says it's because it's not good enough. It's that's everything else. We couldn't have an unbiased conversation because I'm the creator of it.
Mm.
And so I'm either going to acknowledge it's not good enough, or I'm going to come up for reasons that don't put responsibility on my shoulders and instead point the finger at everyone else. And then it's just going to turn into a circle jerk about how great
Mm.
I am and how I'm being fucked by dark forces. So that probably wouldn't be a good podcast because
Also, put it in perspective. Like there are probably thousands and thousands of people doing podcasts
yeah,
that never would get access to a Robert Malone, for
yeah,
example.
yeah.
So it's not like you have achieved quantity in episodes more than most that do podcasts, I would say. So you're in the top percentile. B, you had like quality people on, and you did not bring them in with an agenda. C, you're not monetizing with shill advertisement during your episodes. I don't need to stand up here and say something about a VPN, or you know what I'm
I
saying?
wish
It's
they
like,
would. And I wish I was. I wish I was shilling VPN and Raid Shadow Legends, but Nord VPN and Raid Shadow Legends both declined to respond to an email. So fuck them.
I think if you stick around, maybe hopefully not 2000 episodes, but earlier, but in general, I think if you keep going with the mindset of trying to improve, trying to become better, not blaming others all the time, but trying to like blame you first, try to
Mhm.
improve, and then because that's in your power. If you blame others, usually it's not in your power, so it's not very constructive.
And
And
it would
maybe find ways to harness feedback from people you trust in how to improve, and maybe take a page here and there from people that are more successful. But then also, success is not this linear process. Usually it's like slow, 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 and then it's like taking up like this. So it
yeah.
takes time, but
Yeah.
also, or do it this way.
Yeah.
It's mirroring
Yeah.
here. Anyway, you get the point. So
Yeah.
I think you might be unsuccessful until you're successful, and it might come
Uh,
like this. And
uh,
also, don't do it. Obviously, you don't, but don't do it because you want to have large viewership, but rather because you want to pursue truth and
well
curiosity,
that's
and that's what you're already doing. So,
well
if
that
you make money on top, it would be wonderful, but it needs to be good without making
well
money already.
you have to love it for what it is, and I
Yes.
do. I want the viewership and I want money for basic human needs where I'm like I just want to make sure that I'm like I have an apartment. It's not like I want to fucking I just want to make sure that this is a viable company. Like that's just the reality. I want to make sure I can fucking put food on my table. That's really all I want. You want viewership because it's validation. You're like, okay, my work is good. But I also, yeah, I would also rather blame myself and constantly critique myself and make it better because that's probably what the problem is. And let's say it's not. Let's say I really am getting fucked by someone from the outside. It can't hurt to keep critiquing myself and make it better because then it's just going to get even better. So there's really no value in pointing a finger at anyone other than myself. It's just they're
Yeah, but be kind to yourself
well,
because you
sure,
put
yeah.
in a lot
Don't
of
beat
work.
yourself up. Don't drive yourself mad. That's true. But
Also, you could start a series where you interview more podcast hosts that have started to become successful and ask them
and then
what made them
hire assassins
successful.
to have
Kind
them
of,
killed.
yeah, that could also work. But in
Fucking wipe out
general,
the
like get
competition.
feedback from people that are further down the road with success
Yeah.
on their podcasting career. And then also, it could help your listeners for this kind of like, oh, I want to get into podcasting. I understand now how
And,
the guest of Tommy did it, so I can maybe
and
learn something there.
you know what? My favorite comedian, my favorite podcaster, Tim Dillon. I think he's the funniest guy alive. And there's another, and he's a fat gay comedian. And then his friend Ray
I know
Kump.
Tim Dillon. Maybe you
Yeah,
can get him on the pod someday.
I've tried so many times. And then Ray Kump,
Really?
another fat comedian. The first 100 episodes that Tim Dillon did, his podcast, Tim Dillon's Going to Hell, started like August 2016 and went to like August 2018. It was he and Ray Kump, and they were making no money. They were fucking broke, and they were just fat as fuck, smoking cigarettes, talking about eating Taco Bell, and they were always so mad that they were making no money. Ray's done all right. Tim's become like a multimillionaire famous. If you listen to all of his stuff now, he's still incredibly talented. He was so much funnier in
Mm,
August 2016 to August 2018 because he was angry and unsuccessful and he didn't understand why other things were succeeding. And then he succeeded and now he's set for life. He bought a mansion in the Hamptons. The reality might be this. I might get successful and then that's the death of the real Tommy's podcast. So for all I know, I'm putting out the good old Tim Dillon that he can't get back. He would
mm,
have to get broke, which he wouldn't do. He has a money manager. We might be in a moment right now that I can't recreate. Like one day I might get successful and I'll never have the hunger of doing a podcast from a closet in an apartment. Right.
yeah.
So if that's the case, we are in the good times right now, but we just don't know it. So
Yeah,
it's a catch
the
22. It might succeed and then the beauty of it might be over.
also life is short and the journey is usually what is the
Yeah.
most fun anyways. Like when
Yeah.
you achieve something, it's great, but
It's
then
it's
it's
over.
empty. The pursuit of getting there is what's most fun, especially once you start picking up and the numbers will increase more. The enthusiasm is usually the most fun during that
Yeah.
process because I had stages where I mastered something or get close to, and I was standing on top of the mountain that I set
Yeah.
myself to achieve, and then I felt very empty.
Yeah.
And that's something that most people will only understand once they got there.
Yeah.
The feeling of, oh, this is not what I thought it would be.
Yeah. And that is it. It might get there and it might just be dead. So like this might be prime Tommy's podcast is me angry, screaming that I can't get fucking money or more than 1,000 views a day on Rumble. This might be like primo, and I hope it is. I hope it is because that would mean I succeeded. The best case scenario is that it succeeds. I lose my edge, I lose my spark, and people stop listening because that will mean I have succeeded, which is ultimately what I'm going for is financial stability and financial safety. That's the end goal. That's what I as a human need. But it will also be bittersweet because it will be the end. It might never be as good.
Yeah, but let's be hopeful. I think there are people doing
Or it gets
Patreon,
better.
for example, and
Yeah.
they can make a living doing weird stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, worst case is you can probably do Tommy's OnlyFans or something like
Well,
that.
hey, that's the
Um,
listen, if all else fails, that's where we're going. That's exactly where we go. But it won't be me fucking jerking off on camera. It would just be me doing episodes with you and Dr. Malone. But I'll just be charging people through OnlyFans.
you
That
would
might be the
only
only
do.
maybe the censorship gets so bad that that's the only way to fucking talk about misinformation is we have to categorize it as porn. So it's
Well,
just me like wrapped up in leather and Dr. McCullough is whipping me and we're talking about like adverse reaction programs, but they can't censor it because they'd be bigots.
and you would flash a genital subliminally every few seconds so
Yeah.
people would keep being
Yeah.
interested without understanding why.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no. I would just fall and be naked. I'd have like a butt plug. I'd be wearing a mask, and people would just be whipping me with shit and whatever your fancy is. But we'd be talking about like conflicts of interest between like Pfizer and CNN and election fraud and war and
I think that would work on Twitch, to be honest.
all.
If you would put more effort
Honestly,
into the production quality, because
honestly,
yeah,
yeah. If it was me, yeah. And all of the problem is I wouldn't be able to get my guest to go along. I couldn't get a
you know,
respectable guest to come fuck me on a waterbed or something.
you should try interviewing famous gamers. I think that would be on Twitch live streams. That would be a successful thing.
I got banned from Twitch in summer 2020. I
How
was
did
only
you
on
do
for a
that?
day, and the first episode I uploaded was like a COVID episode, and I got banned from it. So fucking I don't even mention Twitch because it was so short lived.
I think
one and
maybe even
done.
Twitch, but in general, in 5 years, I think there will be a competitor that offers a solution that will make your life much easier when it comes to this
I think
intersection
it.
of Patreon payment subscription model for podcasters, because I think there's enough room for a better solution than what we have right now. All these platforms censorshipping you, that's not the future.
I ultimately think it will work. I wouldn't keep doing it if I didn't think it was going to work. But right now, I just don't know how. So there's nothing to do
Uh,
but keep working and be
watch
optimistic.
Steve Jobs connecting the dots speech,
Yeah,
university speech
no, yeah.
again.
His
In
commencement speech.
those moments, this gives good guidance because you cannot
I know.
understand it
I've watched that.
yet.
I've watched that. I watched that speech before I even started the podcast. I've watched that so many times. Yeah. In hindsight, the things that seem unrelated, yeah, sneaking in a class, calligraphy, fonts, it all ends up falling in perfect line. But all you can do
Yeah.
is follow your gut.
I think it will be true for you with the podcast as well, because you got in contact with so many people now, with so many episodes. I think eventually something will come out of it that will shape the future way your life goes in some way or another. Could be your future girlfriend, could be some business opportunities that arise from a guest, or it could be that you find certain passions from subjects that you were not aware of, and that becomes your career or something like that. So I
Or
think you should enjoy the journey more so than worry about the
yeah,
future.
yeah,
In worst case, just you get a job and you do it as a hobby. And
yeah.
I think that is the worst case, and it's not. It's
It's not
what
bad at all.
99.9% of everybody else has to do. So
It's not bad at all. Worst case
yeah,
scenario isn't bad at all. The reality is I'm healthy. I'm I'm I have I have health care, I have food, I have shelter, I have water. For the moment, America's not under attack. Life's pretty good. Life's not pretty good, life's incredible.
that is a good way to end today.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the
Go down
aliens
the
are,
conspiracy holes, but find a way out into
yeah.
the light again
Yeah.
after.
Or the aliens are coming and they're just gonna fucking dissolve our DNA into goo and then just harvest our fucking souls for energy. That might happen too.
Well, if that is a possibility, then it might be more likely that we're already plugged into the matrix
Yeah.
without realizing how to get out. Right.
Maybe the aliens come, maybe that that is how I'll get the podcast growth is I'll have the first alien interview.
Who's most likely to be a human alien? Elon comes to mind, and probably
Alex Jones.
yeah. Oh man, that guy has a rough few years ahead of him with all the
Yeah.
court shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Alex Jones.
Anyhow, let's
Yeah.
schedule the next
Let's
one
yeah, I
and
texted you.
wrap it up.
Yeah, I'll text I messaged you on WhatsApp. And yeah, good talk. Stay positive, everybody. Maybe COVID's a bioweapon. Maybe it's aliens.
Maybe you're a sleeper cell
Maybe
from
I'm a sleeper
China.
cell and I don't even know it. Maybe Frederick's my handler. We don't even fucking know this. That's the reality. The rabbit hole goes so deep. It's a goddamn wormhole. But Frederick, good talk. I will see you soon. I'll email you the episode when it's up. Everybody else out there, thank you for listening. Take care.